And welcome to the right angle. Well, there's been a lot out there recently in the MAGA world about the anti-war and pro-war forces. Now, I would say, as a matter of fact, I am part of the anti-war faction, but I did want to have a talk today to kind of talk through the things that we're seeing that are, you know, seeming to fracture MAGA apart. I want to start off by getting into an interesting talk between Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson. So let's jump into it.
And this thing is going to be in the next 200 days. The next 200 days are some of the most perilous times for the American Republic in its history. Because if we don't get this sorted, we're going to be drawn in totally into a conflict as a combatant, as not a supplier of logistics, or as an actual combatant, a participant in the situation in Ukraine, what they did in Russia, and the situation of what Israel is right now doing to the mullahs, as bad as they are and as evil as they are. Right, we're going to get sucked into a shooting war of which it'll be 10 years and the casualties will dwarf anything you saw in World War II.
One of the lessons that we never talk about from World War II, since you evoked the comparison, is that the second the shooting war started in Great Britain and the United States, opponents of the war went to jail. And Winston Churchill's entire political opposition went to jail with their wives for the duration of the war, and some of them died. That's been that's just a fact. And you can call those people whatever you want, and they may have been terrible people, whatever, but they were his political opponents, and he put them in jail. And Roosevelt did, sick the federal government on opponents of the war, flat out. So if
Lincoln did the same,
and Lincoln did the same. That's exactly right. I love Lincoln.
And in areas that we control in the Revolutionary War, which is not a lot, the same thing happened. That's called war.
Exactly.
This is what happened.
Exactly. And opponents of war are invariably described as allies of the enemy, and they're persecuted. Do you worry about that happening to you? You just said on camera, I don't want this war, but we're moving toward a third world war.
Well, I saw look.
Are you worried about going back to jail?
I went to prison. I went to prison on a misdemeanor, but it was kind of one of the same things. I wouldn't testify. I wouldn't turn, because I said this committee is not legitimate. Doesn't have a ranking member. Doesn't have a minority counsel. Is totally legitimate. Plus, he's got executive privilege. That's good enough for me. And if I have to fight this, and I think it's going to go to the Supreme Court, although I've served my prison sentence, I'm taking it up to the Supreme Court because I had a pretty good ruling, not terrible, from the appeals court. A couple of the judges are making arguments about why I should take it further. It's definitely going to happen. Look what's happening to you. I mean, I've known you for a long time, and I sit there and I look at what they're saying about Tucker. I said, what is Tucker saying so bad? He's kind of laying out these arguments that ought to be debated right now in the halls.
I feel pretty moderate.
Tom Cotton's coming out and saying, oh, these influencers and podcasters aren't. Well, let's have a debate. When we had a debate about the Ukraine, about the funding of Ukraine in the Senate, we beat them. This is why Mitch McConnell had to resign. Because why? Because the podcasters and influencers are much closer to the MAGA base and can deliver the heat into the House and the Senate, and they know that. I'm all for having a War Powers Act debate right now.
Exactly, I agree.
Let's have the American people weigh in, because you're going to see the American people are 90% against forever war.
Exactly. Now you have that there. Debate is healthy. Having this debate is only something that we can do. The left can't do this. The world in the East is like authoritarian. You do what we say. But part of our culture, our heritage, our blood is debate, reason, and logic. The reasonable position is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon because they will use it. The unreasonable position is that I'm going to distrust Trump for this one reason, even though he's shown me all the spirit that any president could ever have done, other than maybe Teddy Roosevelt. I'm just going to abandon him. That's the crux of this Fox Civil War. And you have some of the MAGA voices that are turning their backs on the movement because of his decisions. And we all understand that America First is lower costs, strong borders, thriving communities, but none of that survives if the world is in chaos. Do you not understand that? Imagine Iran detonating a nuke anywhere in the Middle East. They have primary targets in Israel, us, and Saudi Arabia. Now, if that happens, the ripple effects will be catastrophic. You're talking about skyrocketing prices, global instability, oil markets. You might have the oil go to 300 a barrel. We're talking about 1970s level embargoes and things of that nature. None of us can really look at that and say, okay, well, let's risk it. And we have to keep in mind, none of us are foreign policy experts. I mean, we're just sitting on the sidelines. And what I really mean by that, because, fuck experts, right? But what I really mean by that is that we can't predict the future. But I trust President Trump, not because I'm blindly loyal or a cultist, as the left would say, but because his track record really speaks for itself. He's navigated complex global issues. He's done that with precision. Remember the Abraham Accords? Yes, right? Historic peace deals that reshaped the Middle East. Strategic strikes that he's used on like the Houthis and the I'm forgetting the other name. I think yes, in Syria back in 17. They were surgical, not indiscriminate. And unlike those heavy-handed predecessors he's had, Obama, predator droning everyone to kingdom come, Bush going to war with the world, although the emotion behind 9/11 I can understand. But Trump hasn't done that. He hasn't been a man who stumbled into bad decisions. Now, do I wish we could ignore the world's chaos, be isolationist, fix everything here and say fuck the world? Yes, absolutely. That's not the reality that we're in. President Trump faces pressures and complexities we can't even imagine. We're not in on those conversations. We don't know. Global stability isn't a puzzle. It isn't a simple puzzle, I guess, like you can say. It is a puzzle. It's really a balancing act. Yet, you have some people just ready to abandon him because I get that the anti-war stance is so strong and really outweighs everything. But when you look at everything from a bigger picture, are you really, really, really willing to risk all that we can achieve in these coming years just because you want to be pouty and you don't want to trust Trump? He's going to make the right decisions, and he's going to make it with us, and he's going to tell us. He's going to be open with us about what's going on, about what's happening, and he's going to do those things in a way that makes us feel like, okay, we can trust what this guy is saying. If we lose faith now, we risk everything. A nuclear Iran doesn't just destabilize the Middle East. Like I said, it cripples our economy, inflates costs, and it makes America first impossible. We need to trust President Trump. We need to trust his judgment and, just realize what he's done, what he's brought us here so far. If you doubt his ability to make the right call, fine, I get it. But if you really are doing that right now based on his track record, you haven't been paying attention. Let's stand united behind him, not out of blind allegiance, but because he's earned it. And America First really does depend on it. Well, that's been The Right Angle. I hope you learned something today. We'll see you on the next one.